Alright, y'all, I know I've been gone for a little bit, but I was having some technical difficulties editing the longest video I've made to date. This video is brought to you guys by the homie Byron Weaver 33. Byron been hitting me up, letting me know how he feels about my content, and I appreciate that so much. This video, he asked me, he said, if you were a part of any Ranger season, which one would you be part of? What color would you be? And what's your character bio and story? Well, with all the editing I had to do, no matter how hard I tried, I could only get this video down to a little over 16 minutes. So I'll be releasing this on TikTok in parts. But if you want to see the video, in full, go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Series Operator Orange. This is going to be the first video I drop on there, guys. So thanks to everybody who's been with me up until now. The journey is still going. Aside from that, let's go talk about my Ranger. So our story would go around Aki. This is Aki. If nothing else, the most handsome Ranger, I would say. But that's just me talking. Aki would be the leader of what is designated as Rhino Squadron, which is the ground force equivalent of Eagle Squadron. Fun fact, after leaving military camp, he was designated Eagle 2 under his best friend, Marcus Truman, who was Eagle 1. But then he was later promoted to Rhino 1 in the leader of Rhino Squadron and replaced by Scott Truman, Marcus' little brother. During that final battle of Corinth, it was decided that he and Rhino Squadron were to go to what was presumed to be, presumably, the main Vengex base. He was supposed to destroy the base with charges, extract information about the Vengex virus, and return with a prototype weapon for a Dr. K, who was just a voice and a monitor at the time. He gets there, and the mission is a total fail. One, the base isn't the main Vengex base. The prototype is there. He gets the prototype. All of Rhino Squadron is destroyed except for him. He's only saved by Rhino 2 sacrificing himself to help him escape by detonating the charges. Even though he is hurt by the detonation of the charges, he's still caught in the explosion. He just doesn't get destroyed by it. On his way back, he's saved by Dylan, but this is Dylan, like face mask Dylan, so he didn't know who that was at the time. He was just like basically dying from dehydration in the desert, in the wastelands, and Dylan pulled up and gave him some water on his way to Corinth and asked how to get there. He was going to ride with Dylan, but they got attacked by some grinders, and Dylan just low-key snatched off on him because this was, pre-good Dylan, I met Ziggy Dylan. They kind of both went their own separate ways. He took a grinder motorcycle. Dylan took the car. They went separate ways. He was on his way to Corinth, and he was fighting some grinders when the prototype weapon he was supposed to get for Dr. K opens up, and it's a box. Inside of the box is the morpher in the engine cell. He grabs it, he's running with it or whatever, fighting grinders and everything, trying to get back to Corinth. He puts it on and morphs for the first time here to survive the grinder assault, because contrary to belief, foot soldiers and Power Rangers are extremely dangerous to normal people. So he morphs to fight the grinders. That's when he becomes Series Operator Orange for the first time. He gets into a couple more little brawls with grinders on his way to Corinth. And then when he gets to Corinth, he sees the 5 Rangers in the middle of a fight and decides to jump into the fight to help out the other Rangers just because he's seen them fighting grinders. And he is so bitter for the loss of Rhino Squadron that he just will attack grinders on sight. He really doesn't care what the reason is, or he's not even fighting for the war anymore. It's just purely vengeance at this point. So he fights the grinders with the Rangers. They take him back to the base because they didn't know that there was a 6th Ranger. When he gets there and reveals himself and finds out that Scott is the leader of the Rangers, he wonders, what about Marcus? Where he finds out Eagle 1 died during the final battle against Corinth like the rest of his team. Now he's not only bitter against the grinders, he's also bitter towards Scott because he feels like if he was Eagle 2, Marcus would still be here. So he has a problem with the person who he blames for the death of his best friend being the leader of the team that he is supposed to now be on. And over the course of the series, he has two arcs to get over. His first arc is understanding that Marcus's death is nobody's fault, in that Scott is a great leader, and that he is not a better leader because he feels that the team is unproperly trained because Scott is the leader, when in fact Scott makes do with a untrained team, making him a great leader. And his second arc is that he feels that the mission is not complete. His original mission is not completed until Vengex is destroyed. But he has to learn that the greater mission will be accomplished by succeeding in smaller missions, because he's so hot-headed and in a hurry to get this over with. He does not do well with the smaller missions at first. He feels like only missions he's necessary for involve destroying grinders, destroying bases, and taking out Vengex himself, until we start to find out over the course of the series, the little things he does and the other Rangers do add up to bigger accomplishments, and that's how he becomes more acclimated with the team and become a better person all the way around, to by the end of the series, he, just like the rest of the team, have melded fairly well together, and they complete the series by defeating Vengex. Obviously, his Zord is the Croc Carrier Zord, so he would be part of the... Now let's cover his relationship with some of the main cast, which will help further explain his character arc, I think. These two are water and oil. At the beginning of the series, Aki hates how spontaneous he is, to the point where they get into several arguments that Aki would have definitely taken to fistfights if nobody like Scott or Summer got in the way of the fight. But these two definitely did not get along very well at the beginning of the series. But they start to find a middle ground where a lot of the tactics that Aki uses, Jim provides the proper technology and assistance for, and he also comes up with some great last-minute decisions that Aki would not have come up with because of how straight-minded his character is, that get them out of a lot of dangerous situations as well. So he develops a sort of respect for this character, for Jim, over the course of the series, and they kind of become, I wouldn't say friends, but they respect each other. These two are like water and fire. They get into actual arguments several times throughout the series, just because he doesn't like how spontaneous these two are, and she doesn't like the way that he talks to people. You know, he's very rude and straight to the point. So they get into it a lot. He also undermines their thought process a lot, even though they are two of the smartest people in the room, if not the smartest people in the room if Dr. K isn't there. So over the course of the series, it takes a while for him to realize that they are the smartest people in the room. Just because they don't go about things in a militant way does not mean that they don't know what they're doing. And that's his character arc with these two. He's fairly grateful to Dylan for saving him when he was in the wasteland with the water. So he doesn't necessarily have a problem with Dylan at all throughout the series until he finds out Dylan is a robot. Then he's the most untrusting of Dylan. And then Tanaya comes around, and that almost validates his lack of trust towards Dylan throughout the series. Basically, until the end of the series, he never really trusts Dylan at all after finding out he's a robot. They have their moments where they're like, cordial or passive, but trust is not a factor in their relationship till the end of the series. So his relationship with Ziggy is weird because he grew up in the orphanage Ziggy later went to protect. And he also has a issue with the mob boss Ziggy later finessed, we'll say. So he's grateful to Ziggy, and he kind of admires Ziggy's ability to elude people stronger than him. However, he feels Ziggy does not have the necessary qualities to be the first line of defense for the last hope of humanity. So he doesn't feel like Ziggy is properly. He doesn't feel like Ziggy should be series operator green, but he also feels like there's not much he can do about it. So he just kind of doesn't acknowledge Ziggy as a ranger on the same level as him for a long time throughout the series until the mission where Ziggy saves Dr. K, and then that's when he starts to see that Ziggy does have the qualities necessary to be a hero. They're just different. Like I said, it takes the Rangers. The Rangers show him that there are things deeper into the life of being a hero or being a ranger or being a soldier, even, than just doing the mission given to you and going home ready for the next mission, because that's very much his personality at first. And that vengeance isn't the proper motive to be a hero. It may be the proper motive to be a soldier in his eyes, but it's not the proper motivation to be a hero. And that's what he learns from Ziggy and Jim and Gemma specifically. He just kind of has a passively cordial relationship with Summer, like everybody else that's not Dylan. Summer, you know how Summer is. She's just kind of able to be cool with everybody on the team. So that's their relationship. There's nothing really there deeper than that. That is kind of a her and Dylan thing. He gets along with Finn the most at the beginning of the series, and Finn is kind of the person who tells him about himself a lot. When he does things wrong and the other Rangers kind of scold him about it, he kind of takes it in a negative way, but then he'll talk to Finn about it later. Or if not something, external in the episode that at hand doesn't happen, it's usually Finn who tells him what happened or what he did wrong or the right way to go about things to help him get through situations. And Finn usually tells him in some mechanic metaphor that doesn't really make sense, but makes sense to those two. He's responsible for the death of Marcus, and him and Scott get into actual debates and arguments over pretty much any and everything. Scott doesn't like him, he doesn't like Scott, but the reason Scott doesn't like him is just simply because he is blaming Scott for the death of his brother, and Scott is already traumatized from that mission. Aki throughout the series gets into it with Scott a lot and blames Scott a lot vocally, because internally he just blames himself. He feels like if he was there, it wouldn't have went down that way. But him and Scott go on a solo mission, because of course they do, where they end up trauma bonding about the death of Marcus, and by the end of the series, they're kind of best friends. Kind of. At the beginning, though, he feels like he could be a better leader than Scott, and that he should lead the team because he was actually the leader of a team, and Scott wasn't. But then Scott brings up that just like Marcus, Aki also failed his mission, which causes them to get into a fist fight at their base, that then later turns into a morphed fight in that episode, because I just really feel like the Red Ranger and the Ranger that they have beef with the most always have that like once in a season morphed fight between the two that really doesn't go anywhere. After the fight, Aki leaves the team for a little bit. Then, like I said, they go on that tag team mission that they have to go on. It's probably some type of infiltration mission, I would assume. They both succeed in the mission. They do some trauma bonding, and that starts their path and Aki's path to becoming a more fluid member of the team, because he starts to see Scott as a better leader from that point on. His relationship with Dr. K is broken almost immediately, because he feels like he blames Dr. K. Throughout the series, you'll see Aki has a tendency to blame everyone around him that was kind of involved with the Venjex's war in the beginning. He blames them wholeheartedly for what happened to Marcus and his situation with his team. So he does not like Dr. K and tends to, like I said, not be a member of the team at first once he finds out Dr. K created the Vengex virus. But upon learning some of the background of Dr. K from Jim and Gemma, and doing And scanning that information he stole earlier from the Vengex factory, he learns a lot about, Alphabet Soup and the origins of Dr. K. And he starts to blame more of the government for Dr. K than he blames Dr. K for Vengex. And their relationships becomes more passive as well. His relationship with Colonel Truman is also another one that's like broken immediately upon his return to the series, because Colonel Truman was his father figure character, his role model, because of the amount of time he spent with Marcus and Scott through military camp, in their time in the military as well. So he feels like Colonel Truman sent him and his own son on suicide missions. So he doesn't respect Colonel Truman as a leader either. But he finds out later on more about how Colonel Truman also didn't understand the depth of what the mission was, and also feels like he let them down as a leader. So they kind of have that thing going on. But because of how his relationship with Scott, Dr. K, and Colonel Truman is at the beginning of the series, he's more of a Eric-like character or a Merrick-like Sixth Ranger, where he starts off completely not jiving with the team whatsoever, but by the end of the series, he's more splintered, if that makes sense. Like, he's part of the team, but he doesn't hang out with them more as necessarily on a social level. He's not hanging out with them on a Friday night, if that makes sense. But he respects everybody on the team. He cares about everybody on the team, and would definitely risk his life to save or sacrifice himself in any situation to save any one member of the team by the end of the series. And that is the character Series Operator Orange. I hope you like the character. One day in the future, I'll make an actual story about the character. But aside from that, if you like the content that I put out, let me know down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. My name is Series Operator Orange, and we're out of here. Getting gear.